Now back to the show. This is The Law Show on CL 650.
Welcome back to the program. Sterling Fox with Joe Murphy and Angela Price-Stevens in studio. Our guests are from Murphy Batista in Vancouver, downtown at 650 West Georgia Street. They are a personal injury law firm practicing in our city since the early 80s. And we promised we were going to talk about ICBC and when to get a lawyer involved. And I facetiously said, well, we all have at least one brush with ICBC in our driving lives. And I think, Joe, that's a fairly safe statement to make. I think I've been driving in BC for 40 years, and I think I've dealt with ICBC twice. On fender bender, at the intersection, a crinkle in my back, nobody hurt, a small amount of damage to the vehicle. Is that a pretty typical case, or do people actually get injured more frequently than just a ding in the fender?
Sterling, I would think that the majority of accidents don't result in injuries.
Okay.
And you can have fairly significant accidents where no one's hurt, or you can have very modest accidents where people can be badly hurt.
That's the surpriser, too, isn't it?
You don't look at the damage to the bumper, you look at the damage to the neck. It's really, there isn't a rule there. The ICBC stats are 9 out of 10 people with injury claims don't hire lawyers.
Okay.
So 1 in 10 does. ICBC, I'm confident, has a campaign that's always being waged to discourage people with injury claims from even talking to a lawyer.
In fact, there's an ad on TV right now in which someone claiming to be with their communications department comes on camera and says, don't pay any attention, don't listen to rumors. And these would be, I suppose, statements made by, lawyers, Joe, you think, maybe, huh? Regarding the efficiency of ICBC. So, okay, if only 1 in 10 of us calls a lawyer when there's an injury involved, what do the other 9 do, Joe?
Sterling, they deal directly with ICBC, and there are risks when you do that. It doesn't mean that you're going to get taken advantage of and shortchanged, but it means there's a risk that might happen.
Okay.
And the more significant the injury, the more worthwhile it is, and the more important it is for the person to talk to a lawyer. I get phone calls from people, and they've been in modest accidents, and I say to them, you probably don't need a lawyer, but let me give you advice of what you need to do and not do.
Right.
One of the things I tell them is you don't settle your claim until you're all better and back to your normal activities, but that you have 2 years after an accident in which you have to start a lawsuit or your claim is gone, it's lost.
Okay, so there's your statute of limitations.
Yeah, but I tell people, here's, and this is more common than not, I'll say to them, you probably don't need a lawyer. Here's what you need to do and not do.
Right.
And when you get to the point where you're thinking of settling, call me back, and in 5 minutes I can tell you what your claim's worth, and you can negotiate directly with the adjuster. And you don't need to hire a lawyer, and you don't need to pay a legal fee. Those are on the small, modest claims.
Okay.
For those people, they don't need a lawyer, but they need legal advice. But
if to navigate the process.
To understand it. And I'll give you an example. If I am injured in an accident and I go into the claim center with my car, somebody looks at my car, one of the other adjusters meets with me and says, okay, how are you doing? Well, my neck is sore and I've got headaches. And they say, okay, well, we need you to sign some forms. And one of the forms is a form which allows ICBC to access all of my medical records for years and years in the past.
Which they could use against you if it suited their needs.
Yes, and
plus the fact you just got injured last week. What happened to you 25 years ago matter?
Well,
in today's context.
Yeah, if I've had a history of sore neck and sore back, then that's relevant.
Okay.
But if I've been in to see my doctor because one of my children is having mental problems, or if I've been in to see a doctor because if I'm a young woman, I've had an abortion, that kind of information isn't relevant.
Right.
And it shouldn't be going to anyone who's sitting across the table because then the issue is, well, listen, do you really want to push this and have all this stuff come out? And that's almost something that's unsaid, but it's there. Another thing that ICBC does is they use these forms to get a report from the treating doctors. And then when it comes time to settle, they say to this person, okay, well, your doctor said that you got better quickly, so it's not worth much.
Right.
And often, if the person says, can I see that report from Dr. Smith? The adjuster will say, I'm not allowed to show it to you. Well, that's nonsense.
Right, right.
So when you sign just this one little form that seems so simple, it can have a huge impact, and it's a form that does not need to be signed.
Right. Angela, let me just back up to where that point when you just arrived at the ICBC Claims Center. If now this all was, Joe's remarks were predicated on the fact that there was some injury, some discomfort that evolved out of this fender bender. What happens though if I go to the claim center, Angela, and there's no injury? I feel fine. The guy I dinged was okay. There's a little bit of paint here and there, and there's definitely a wrinkle in both vehicles, but everybody's fine. So we think, and of course Joe recommends, you don't diagnose on the spot, but nobody's complaining. So does a lawyer need to get involved then? Because now we're just talking about paint scratches and a dented fender.
Well, generally speaking, my experience with ICBC, personally and vicariously through clients, is that generally ICBC tends to be pretty fair when it comes to economic loss as far as your repairing the vehicle.
Okay.
I mean, there are exceptions, and some people are not happy, and maybe some of those people are truly have grounds to be unhappy. But generally, ICBC tend to deal with the car repairs pretty well. Now, I'm not clear from your question whether we're actually thinking about there truly are no injuries. I mean, if there are no injuries, there's really no need to speak to a personal injury lawyer.
Okay.
I mean, there's if you feel that you're unsure, I mean, if you do have a sore neck and you're unsure as to how this may develop, then I think what you need to bear in mind is you're actually under no obligation to sign anything immediately. As much as they will push paper and oh no, we have to get this signed today. Oh no, I must. You're obligated to provide a statement. Well, when you actually step back and think, okay, what am I obligated to do? The statement you have 30 days to provide.
Okay.
But the statement, if you see a brief statement that would actually comply with your obligations, would be nothing compared to the detail that they would extract from you.
Okay.
Due to close questioning. And of course, the ICBC employee has been very well trained to extract certain key pieces of information. They have boxes that they have to tick.
Right, sure.
Even though, they're not identified to you.
But could it be that when people come to ICBC and no one's hurt, the other guy said, I'm fine, this is just a real pain, and let's just get this resolved. So off you go to the claim center, and all you want to do is sign something that'll get the wheels turning so you can get the dent hammered out of your car, maybe get a few bucks in your pocket by way of a check. That's all you want. So where can I sign, and let's get this over with? Is that's sort of what a lot of people go with if there are no injuries, correct?
Yes, absolutely.
Let's just get this done.
Yes.
And in that case, it's okay to sign?
Again, you don't sign anything without reading it. I mean, you certainly do not. I mean, if there's no injuries, there's absolutely no basis for signing anything that would
release
medical.
Sure.
So really, in that situation, you would be releasing, or you would be making, giving consent for perhaps repairs to be done on the vehicle, and if it's just relating to the car or the vehicle, I would be happy. I'd be relatively happy to sign that.
Right.
Because you don't want to hold.
Yeah, Sterling, ICBC has a program where if it appears that there's only damage to the property, there's a track or program where people don't need to go to the claim center. They say, okay, just take your car to, and I assume they have approved dealers,
right,
so
sure.
you don't deal with this. But as Angela said, the idea of signing forms, and people are told you have to sign these forms, can create real problems for this person who may have been hurt in the accident but not realize the extent of the problem. And just to give you an example of that, if I'm in an accident and it herniates one of my discs, I may not have symptoms from that tell me I've got a bad injury for up to 3 months.
Okay.
Now, usually it's immediate, usually it's fast, but it can be 3 months later. So you really have to be careful when you're dealing with ICBC to make sure that you're not giving them information that you don't need to. And especially with the medical records, there's just I would not give anyone my medical records over the last 10 years because, again, the kinds of things you discuss with your doctor are varied. They involve family members. They involve all sorts of issues that have no bearing whatsoever on a sore neck or back from an accident.
Right. Can we flip the coin and just try and look at this through ICBC's filter for a moment? Because many people, and I'm sure more than a few listening to us right now, would go, you know, I've dealt with ICBC a couple of times, and geez, they made me feel like the enemy. They made me feel like I was trying to rip them off, and all I was trying to do is just resolve a reasonable claim. But ICBC, I'm talking about your example, Joe, of the 3 months required to identify possibly a herniated disc or some other injury resulting from a collision that may not be immediately evident. So ICBC, I'm sure, is treated annually to a pretty much a non-stop parade of people claiming soft tissue injuries months after the fact, after an accident, and not all of those claimants are legitimate. So ICBC, as a corporation, has to be kind of on the defensive because they know they're going to be people out there trying to rip them off. So how do you, I mean, you know you don't as a citizen like to go to an ICBC office and be treated like the enemy, but you kind of know why they're doing it.
Oh, without a doubt, Sterling. My premiums on my car are based upon not only my driving record, but the amount they pay out to everybody. So any motorist in the province is well served by ICBC being very careful and sometimes being suspicious on claims that appear unusual.
Right.
So there's nothing wrong with them doing that. The problem is when people, and I'll just give you an example. If I'm in an accident and I have some low back pain, maybe shooting pain into my leg for a few hours after the accident, and I think, well, this is nothing, I could go to a claim center and probably sign a form saying I'm fine, I've had no symptoms, because I'm not trying to make something out of nothing, and this was trivial.
Yeah.
That would come back to bite me. Because if I said, well, really I did have these original symptoms and then it flared up a few weeks later, they'd say, well, Mr. Murphy, look at this form you signed.
Right.
You said, I'm fine, I didn't have any problems after the accident period. Are you telling the truth now or are you lying?
Right.
So I'm trying to be a good guy. I'm trying to downplay what I think is a trivial problem. But that comes back to bite me because I made a statement that I didn't need to make.
Right.
And I signed a form that I had maybe a minute to look over. It looked fine. I signed it.
Well, I can remember going to the claim center, and the guy from the desk handed me a clipboard and said, we need you to sign this. And so I signed it, being not a lawyer and kind of young and dumb at the time. But, you know, I just signed it because the guy said you should sign it. I'm in an ICBC office. He's an officer of the corporation and says, you should sign this. We need you to sign this. So what are you going to do? You're going to sign it, of course.
Well, and you're meeting with them.
Says the lawyer. What are you thinking, Sterling?
And you're meeting with them as your insurance company. They're taking care of you. They're fixing your car. You know, the idea that they're really on the other side of the table when it comes to an injury claim isn't something that's in people's minds.
Right, of course.
Unless they've spoken to a lawyer, got some legal advice, which takes 5 minutes on the phone, and then they understand how the system works.
Okay, so we need to take another break. But just before we go to the break, Angela, why on earth do so few of us take advantage of a free phone call to a personal injury lawyer when there are doubts with respect to the aftermath of a collision?
That is a very good question. And when you bear in mind that, as Joe has said, 5-10 minute phone call free to a lawyer, I don't understand it. But then, of course, I'm looking at it from my perspective, knowing, being confident in my skills and where I'm coming from my perspective, that there's no reason not to take free legal advice. Now, I am also aware that there may be concerns from listeners approaching a lawyer, and they think lawyer equals money,
Right.
or equals commitment, or something that I may not want. But
or let alone could afford.
well,
begin
absolutely,
to afford.
absolutely.
Right.
But the takeaway piece from this needs to be that, as Joe said, many potential clients actually don't need a lawyer. They just need that bit of free advice.
Right.
And they can go off and deal with ICBC and then say, come back, just touch base with me in a few months, let me know what they're offering, and I can tell you whether it's reasonable or not.
That's a fantastic service to provide to someone out of the blue on the phone, and you do that all the time too, don't you?
Yes, we do that regularly.
Yeah.
Yes. So if listeners are confident that a lawyer is not there to entrap them into some kind of fee agreement or retainer that they don't need, then if they've got that piece of information, then there really is no reason not to contact a lawyer.
Sterling, if I can say this, I think people see it like walking onto a used car lot and having the two salesmen in the polyester suits running towards them. They're thinking, oh, no, they're going to catch me. When, in fact, it's like a help desk.
Right.
You go up and say, okay, this is the help I need. But there is that fear. There's the reluctance. There's the suspicion. And the tragedy is people sometimes need advice and they don't get it.
Right. Our guests from Murphy Battista, Joe Murphy, and Angela Price-Stevens. We're talking ICBC and you on The Law Show on CIL 650, and we're back with more after this.
There's more of the show still ahead. This is The Law Show on CIL 650.